Hello and welcome back to the music and movie show for week 2.
Yay! Woo.
Yay.
It's not really
Hello,
week 2,
guys.
Anyway. I was like confused for a second. So how are we all?
Yeah, I'm better now that we fixed this. So, you guys listening on radio, we really messed it up this time around. We couldn't figure out how
We
to
had
work this
slight
around.
issues. We didn't mess it up.
Wasted
Don't make us
5
seem so
minutes.
incompetent.
Yeah. Okay, so we forgot to press one button, to be fair. Yeah.
Yes, we are total professionals.
that was
Any-
stressful.
It was a bit stressful. Anyway, it's all good now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah,
good.
okay.
All fixed now.
I'm
All
surprised they let us
done, all
back
set.
inside.
Yeah,
Yeah, considering how we're doing this.
for sure. So I guess we'll start off. We'll get straight into it. So have you guys seen any movies, or you guys been excited over anything over like the past week or so? You gotten up to much?
um,
No,
Ye-
assessments.
Yeah,
Nothing movie related.
way too many assignments.
unfortunately.
But there's one movie that I'm really excited about, Uncut Gems. It's by the directors of Good Time. And initial reviews are amazing, and I can't wait for it to come out. But
Cool.
apart from that, there's nothing. I haven't watched anything all
Yeah.
week. It's been terrible.
Oh, I did start watching The Young Pope like 2 weeks ago, directed by Sorrentino, I think. Oh wow, really? It's so like disturbing. I don't know, like, cause it's like. It's Jude Law. He's very good looking, but he plays a freaking pope. So, but no, I thought it was like really interesting about, how the Catholic sort of, I don't know if you could say industry, but the Catholic sort of
Industry.
industry,
Industry.
yeah, how it like operates and how it can be so easily exploited, and how also it relies heavily on tourism, and it's how it has to like balance, being really really devoted to a religion, but also still getting in that tourist bank. So I thought that was really interesting, and it was quite illuminating, and also it's so like the cinematography and stuff is really beautiful, and the costumes and everything in the setting I really loved. So yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but it's looking good.
I read a great article in The Age a couple of days ago about the new film, The Joker. Is it just
Oh, I
Joker?
think it's just
The
Is it?
Joker?
It's just Joker.
With
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin
We thought it was
Phoenix.
pronounced Joaquin.
Isn't it Joaquin?
Joaquin, sorry.
Joaquin.
There we go.
Walk-in.
Oh, I
Just
don't
walk
know.
in.
Walken.
Just walk
I
in.
thought you were talking about Christopher Walken for a second. I was like, he's in that? Really?
But yeah, very excited for that film. It was interesting. The actor actually lost 23 and a half kilos
my
to play the role.
gosh.
Yeah, and he said that he really had to, he was obviously starving during the whole production, and he tried to
Jeez.
channel that hunger, that anger into his character. It was
Oh,
really...
wow.
Huh.
I've heard so many contradictory things about that movie. I've heard like it beats the hype, and then I've also heard like it adds nothing to Joker lore, and also I've heard
Exactly.
that. Oh really?
Yeah.
Because I've also heard
It's
that
not
it's a
related to the
rallying
whole
cry for
DC thing.
incels
It's- but yeah.
as well.
David Eldridge. David Eldridge.
Isn't it supposed to be
Yeah.
like an antecedent to the whole Joker series? Like what happened before he became the Joker?
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But I think he made the movie kind of independent from the whole DC universe.
Yeah.
It's just...
Wait, is it part of the DC universe?
It is part of the DC universe per se, because it's Joker, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
not related to the whole
Oh,
thing which is
okay.
going on right now. It's not
Right,
related
right,
to the
right,
whole overarching DC universe.
Yep,
And
okay.
regarding what you said before about losing 23 kgs, I read an interesting quote. I don't remember who exactly it was who said it. It was to Dustin Hoffman, who was playing the main character in Marathon Man, and he apparently was not sleeping for days in order to prepare for his role.
Wow.
And the guy, I don't remember the guy's name. He was a very famous theater actor. He was like, "My dear boy, why don't you just act?" Yeah, why don't you just act?
Yeah.
Method acting.
Method acting.
Yeah, wow.
I'm not even sure if that's what it is.
All right. So, David, what are we gonna do today?
So I guess today what we're mainly going to go over is we're going to be going over thrillers, movies that I guess evoke emotion through pejorative consequences, things that just haunt you, things that follow you, that you don't really know where they're coming from, and stuff like that. We'll be going over Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense. We'll be going through David Fincher, the other master of suspense. And we just hope that we can teach you something new, and maybe expose you to some different kinds of films. So with that done, let's move on to Hitchcock.
So that brings us into Psycho, our first sort of film. I think one of the most interesting things about this film, I guess many of us will be able to relate to, is that its reputation definitely precedes it. Personally, I hadn't seen this for so long, yet I knew the film, I knew what it was about, I knew the classic shower scene, probably the most famous scene, arguably, in cinema history. I think another interesting thing about the film is that it was sort of shot on the crux of a personal crisis for Hitchcock. He was obviously very invested in making the film, but Paramount didn't want to spend the money on it. So Hitchcock said, fine, I'll do it with a TV crew. He opted not to be paid his usual, I think usually he was paid about $250,000 for his films, but he opted to take just 1/3 of the profits.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up with a lot of money. But yeah, it was shot entirely in black and white because that was obviously cheaper, and it was made with an $800,000 budget.
Yeah.
So it's interesting coming from that, how it turned out to be such a successful film.
Yeah, well, like from what I've heard and from what I've read, specifically the Roger Ebert review of it, he said that basically he took his entire television crew from when he was creating his TV show about suspense, and he basically used them to create the film. He didn't use any of his crew from stuff like North by Northwest, Vertigo, or Rear Window. He wanted to make something like an exploitation
Film, yeah.
kind of film, something cheaper, something I guess more dingy. And it's quite ironic that like of all the films that he created, this one had the greatest impact for just, I guess, making a film that really was, to quote Alfred Hitchcock himself, a film that belongs to the filmmakers, just like all of us, I guess. And it was just insanely amazing to see also all of the ways that they cut it, because by using the black and white they could use blood, but it wasn't actually blood, it ended up being chocolate syrup, and it's just the ways that he managed to almost cut corners and stuff like that that was insanely amazing to watch in the film.
Yeah. I guess it really opened the floodgates for screen violence on film. I mean, that murder was 45 seconds long. That's a long time.
And the best part was, it was a retaliation to all those people who said that you can't show murder on screen, you can't show blood on screen. I mean, someone getting stabbed on screen. He made that, and it's even more violent in a way.
Even
and,
sorry.
And the editing needs a special mention, to be honest. The editing in this movie is amazing, and I think it should be taught in all film schools, and I think it's taught in all film schools the way he edited it, along with Breathless. And another main thing about this movie, despite its low budget, he still managed to cast Anthony Perkins in it, who is amazing in it, in his role, and it was something which you don't usually see in movies of that time, a role like that. And it's just iconic, the whole ending, the shower scene, everything that precedes the shower scene, which it's just amazing. It's just a film at its best.
Even the fact that the shower scene's only a third of the way through the film, you know, you get this main, or who you think is the main protagonist, Marion. He sets up her story, he sets up her motivations, but then she's killed a third of the way through the movie.
Yeah.
And that's just unheard of, you know? That was just absolutely crazy.
And also one more thing, before the shower scene happened, we had things happening before it which kind of predicted what was going to happen. For example, the window wiper thing, the way the shadows moved, everything, it was predicting that this was about to come. And yeah.
Yeah, I guess he sort of places her, he's sort of consistently presenting her in scenarios of danger before the actual scenario of danger. So you get that instance where obviously she steals the money, I think it's $40,000. Then you get that paranoia of the police chasing her. So it really builds that up as the threat of the film, and then all of a sudden she's murdered in the shower.
Well,
And
I
it's-
mean, I haven't seen this movie, but like I've heard so much about. As you said before, its reputation precedes it, and I know the iconic shower scene and the music that goes with it, the squeaking violins, and I think that's really like, it's quite it's very trademark Hitchcock, I would say. Yeah.
Definitely. Even the link between sex and violence. You know, the first scene, we see Marion in a bedroom with a man, she's unmarried, he's unmarried. It's very sexually explicit, and I feel like that was very groundbreaking for the times.
Oh, groundbreaking is the ending of North by Northwest, I think. The whole train entering into the tunnel scene, which is supposed to mean something else. And I think Hitchcock always had that kind of kinky self to him.
Yeah.
Whoa, now.
And I think like one of the most interesting things about the entire shower sequence is that initially Alfred Hitchcock envisioned it as completely silent, so there wasn't going to be any music, there wasn't going to be anything. But then his the composer actually mentioned to him, he showed him the backing track, and then Hitchcock was like, "Yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from," and completely flipped with respect to that. Also, one of my favorite things about Psycho is, I guess, all of the references that you see nowadays in films
Yeah.
to Psycho. For example, in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction,
Exactly.
when he
walks across this, when he's driving the car and someone
Yeah.
walks across the street and looks at him, yeah.
and it's
When he's
exactly
trying to flee, right?
yeah, and
Wait,
it's just
that's a reference to Psycho?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen the movie. but
there's
yeah.
like clear visual parallels, and I mean it's had such a big impact that even the director of My Own Private Idaho and of Good Will Hunting recreated it himself using Vince Vaughn as one of the actors. It's just amazing how it's changed the world of cinema, despite being something that was meant to be almost, I guess, from how it was described, a throwaway film.
Yeah,
So what do we think on so Psycho is one of his most iconic movies, but what do we think of Vertigo? Because I know that was recently-ish voted like best movie.
Wasn't
ever.
it BFI or something? Or Sight and Sound?
I think it was Sight and Sound.
Yeah,
They
Sight-
said it was the best movie ever. At the time, I didn't agree because
I
I was
think-
studying
I
the movie
think,
for school, so I like hated the movie when I was studying it. But obviously,
I think it topped the list for like 20, 30 years or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it dethroned Citizen Kane, I think.
Did it?
No.
I think. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it was number one for quite a long time. I'm not sure about it.
Oh,
I think it
okay.
changed again though. But Vertigo is an amazing movie again.
Yeah, no, I really loved it.
The way Hitchcock blocks shots, how he shows characters in certain sets, how even the sets play a character, and I think that's Hitchcock's biggest strength. He can bring in everything, and everything is involved in the movie. The sets, the characters, set design, the costume, the music. It was one of the
Music
first.
especially I
Yeah.
really like, because it's the whole premise of the film is about a spiraling obsession, and that's it's expressed through his vertigo condition, his obsession with the female lead, and I think that and it's that motif is represented through the music, through the opening credits, through the poster, and through just so many visual motifs even throughout the film. I think it's really clever.
Talking about Vertigo, there's another Alfred Hitchcock James Stewart combination that I really like, Rear Window. I think that's my personal favorite Hitchcock movie.
It's a
I
great
think
film.
everything about the movie, it's defined by its opening sequence. I think the opening sequence is one of the greatest in movies, in my opinion. It's literally tells us everything that we need to know about the character, his surroundings, the behavior of the people in his surroundings, what the movie is going to do, and I think again, genius. Hitchcock is.
Yeah, that's a great film. Even like the photographic vignetting during that whole film, really, and that whole male gaze sort of idea. It's very
Yeah.
creepy.
Yeah, really
Once
interesting.
again, mixing that like sexual pleasure with like the threat and the thrill.
It's
And
another movie which has been referenced in recent times, Under the Silver Lake, starring
Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield. Yeah, it has a really strong reference to the Rear Window scene. Another movie which people should check out. It's really good.
And I think I think that Rear Window itself, it really is a masterclass into editing, because from what I've heard, the main actor, I forget his name at the moment. James Charles. Stewart. Oh,
Yeah.
James Stewart. Well, I guess that's a Freudian slip. But yeah, James Stewart. Apparently, he wasn't actually told anything about like what he didn't actually know what the story was going to be. Essentially, Alfred Hitchcock just put him in different positions and made him just say lines and stand and so forth. And then, by the power of editing, Hitchcock just cut it into an entire movie that made sense and turned out to be a classic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hitchcock did things to his actors at times. I think the lead actress in Birds, I don't remember her name right now.
Oh, she was like, she had claims about like, oh, I was terrorized on set and stuff like that.
She
Or,
was
like, treated
terrorized
really
by the
badly.
birds. Yeah, exactly. He set the birds on her without any kind of protection or anything.
Jeez.
He used to do stuff like that. Similar to how Stanley Kubrick did in
Shelley
Shining.
Duvall.
Yeah.
That scene where she walks into, is it the church, where she hears the children singing, and then she comes out
Yeah.
and
the
she
birds.
looks at that play frame, and then she turns around, and then you see all the birds.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
And how it just builds up and all of that. That's
Such a good
actually
scene.
like, honestly, I reckon Birds is like one of the films that I would like to see remade, if any. Purely because, like, or not even remade, just remastered, so that the birds maybe don't look as campy as they used to.
Wasn't it remade in a really, really bad film? There was something.
Oh, if that's the case, then
I don't want to see it.
It's
then
like-
yeah, I take that
think
back.
It's like the Birds or something. I remember like is it this one? It might be the Birds to Land's End.
Okay.
Like I remember watching like a YouTube video on it, and the birds looked really, really fake, and they didn't even look the slightest bit menacing. They just looked like seagulls coming after your chips.
Yeah.
I think it might have been this one, the Birds to Land's End. Yeah. Anyway.
I felt
fun
like
fact.
also the end of the Birds, there was actually an ode to it, in my opinion. I'm not sure if it actually is a genuine reference, but at the end of Us, the most recent Jordan Peele film, when he has like basically all of the
All the people holding hands lining
holding
up.
hands. Spoiler alert. Too late for that.
Yeah.
But all the people holding hands, it's similar to the ending of Birds, where there's just birds everywhere, and it's almost that menacing thing that I think is becoming a lot more prevalent in horror movies nowadays, where it's less about, oh, we've got to defeat it, and it's more just an acceptance of it. And you see things like a similar theme going all the way through like Ari Aster's films, especially with things like Midsummer and Hereditary, where both of them just end on a refreshing note. I don't want to
It's not just
talk about it
Ari Aster,
anymore.
I think it's the guy who directed The Witch.
Robert Eggers as
Yeah,
well.
Robert Eggers, yeah. Again,
And-
another refreshing take on the horror.
And moving on from one master of suspense to another, let's move on, shall we, to David Fincher, one of the masters of modern suspense, I guess you could say.
What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What have we done to each other? What will we do? These are my favourite words from Gone Girl. The film's bookended with these words. You see Rosamund Pike, who plays Amy's head, lying down,
Like,
the
I
hand
think
on
this
her
one,
head when she
yeah.
turns around, her like hollow sort of eyes looking into the camera. Very, very spooky. So this film, directed by, of course, David Fincher, is a 2014 psychological thriller. It's based on a book. It was a 2012, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
by
by Gillian Flynn.
Gillian Flynn, yes, that's right. So yeah,
What is it
it's well, where to start? It's really about a relationship, obviously, turning bittersweet and spiraling through this sort of atmosphere of lost privilege, frustration, infidelity. Yeah, one of my favourite films, definitely. I think a big thing to say about this film is how postmodern it is. It's interesting because the heroes and the villains of the film are more so the stories and the characters. It's all about who's telling the truth,
And like whose
versions
side
of
to
the
take,
truth. Yeah,
and who's
exactly.
like,
Ambiguous.
who's really in the wrong here. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're presented with the story of Nick and Amy. It's this idyllic marriage with, narcissistic intelligence, wit. They're very intelligent
They kind of
characters.
like that not like other couples sort of stereotype. Like, you know how girls are always like, oh, I'm not like other girls. This is the couple version of it. They're like, oh, you know, my wife doesn't throttle me about staying too late at the bar, and also my husband loves me and blah blah blah. I'm not under his thumb. It's stuff like that. They fake their way into a seemingly perfect equal relationship, but that all comes undone when things happen.
He has an affair.
Yeah.
I guess what really happens in the film is the M in marriage ceases to exist as matrimony and sort of turns to manipulation. I found it really interesting watching the film because in the very first scene, you see Nick walk into he and his sister's bar, and he hands her a Mastermind board game, and I felt like that was a bit of a motif for the whole film. It's definitely a sort of mastermind.
I think she puts it with other games such as like the Game of Life and Clue. So I think it's like Finch is saying something about how there was a bit where he was playing, I think, the Game of Life incorrectly, and that was like, you know, it's not that on the nose, but when you think about it, it's kind of on the nose, like an on the nose metaphor about how he doesn't know how to play the game of life, which is clearly how Amy sees it. But yeah, I thought that was really, really clever, really subtle.
I reckon what I love the most about this film with regards to the rest of David Fincher's oeuvre, I guess you could call it, is that he takes a step in the direction that I guess a lot of well-known directors and a lot of well-known films take, in the way that he kind of like breaks down the facade of the typical family. So they seem to be the perfect couple, and afterwards, after everything goes down, that's essentially what they play out. And it's a theme that people such as David Lynch with Blue Velvet, people such as Sam Mendes with American Beauty have gone into, and it's a very interesting take on that whole entire genre, and showing how in reality things are a lot more volatile than they may seem. And I feel like Rosamund Pike, despite being, I was when I was watching it with my dad, I actually was like, she seems like an alien just in the way she moves, which is kind of ironic given like the person that she plays, because I feel like at the same time it's so unhuman but also so human in how she takes things and how she handles things, especially how she interacts with other women and so forth. Like she more alienates herself in order to accept who she is. But I was just interested in that whole aspect of what Fincher did, especially with just, again, his whole entire dulled color tone choice was a complete contrast to previous iterations in the whole breaking down of the facades of modern families, I guess you could say.
I found her parents really interesting in the way they sort of commodified her life. You know, they turned it into this
Amazing
publication
Annie.
success, Amazing Amy, and that sort of interplay between, you know, that expectation versus the reality, and her trying to become something that she's not within her own relationship, but at the same time trying to escape those expectations. Really interesting.
That's an interesting point, and I think it plays to a larger theme of the movie, which is the truth is not what matters. The truth doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what people perceive of the truth, the media representation, how the media perceives the truth. And it's also about this whole YouTube culture of people getting cancelled. There's no innocent until proven guilty. I mean,
there's like more grey areas than just that.
I mean, it used to be innocent until proven guilty, but now it's the other way around. It's guilty until proven innocent. And
especially with like there's a term for it, but it's like with the media and their role in like unraveling what happens in the what?
I guess you could call it fake news almost in some cases.
Yeah, I suppose.
Or an
I
iteration
think it's
of
not
it.
really fake news. It's just about exploiting it's about getting the more clickbaity articles
It's kind of like
out
the
there.
media is the jury in a way. Like you know, throughout
That's-
most of the movie, they thought that he did it.
You know
and
that
even-
scene when he's smiling in front of her poster?
I was just like, you
The missing
idiot.
persons poster, yeah.
You idiot.
And they take that and they put in every single...
Yeah, and granted, they did like, they didn't retain the context of that scene. But
Exactly.
Also, like, I don't know, that character, that was an idiotic movement.
Again, yeah, it's all about the clickbait culture. It's about getting the news which is the most sensational out there. It's no longer about presenting the truth as it is. It's just about getting people to believe in some version.
It's like
which,
about getting
yeah,
clicks first.
Yeah, getting
And
clicks first.
The clickbait
Whatever,
version is very
whatever
outrageous.
is more dramatic or more sensational, it fetches views. And I think another movie which does this very well is one of my favorite thrillers of all time, Nightcrawler, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. And I think what it does is the same thing. It's not about putting the news out there. It's about taking the most sensational version of the news. It's about getting there first, no matter what the situation is, not caring about how people are going to get affected by how you present this kind of news.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed the music of Gone Girl. When I was watching it, I was sort of trying to pinpoint what he was trying to emulate, and I did some reading on it. And apparently, David Fincher had been to this day spa one day, and he'd heard this really weird sort of creepy music. It was supposed to be relaxing, but he found it really creepy, and he thought to himself, I need to use this in a movie. So next time you're watching the film, have a listen. It does sound like a creepy day spa, and I feel like it really emulates that sort of atmosphere of
It's perfect on the outside.
Exactly, it's
but there's
perfect
something
on the
really
outside,
insidious on the inside. 'Cause,
but
like,
your
you can
therapist is
tell-
going to kill you. Yeah.
Because like I love how that they have like the main melody is kind of like in a major key. This is kind of getting music theory-ish, but it's like in a major key. But underneath, you can just hear like this kind of not Jaws, but like kind of Jaws, like I don't know, minor sort of like surging motif underneath, and it just gives you this feeling of like, oh, something's gonna happen. Like this is actually so messed up. Even though on the like the overlying melody is really, it seems happy. It seems to portray like a perfect life, a perfect marriage, and I think it's like a good representation of what the film is.
In terms of criticism on the film, I have a few points. I think some of the casting was a bit questionable. Personally,
Patrick
casting
Harris.
Neil Patrick Harris,
Yes.
all I could think of
Barney.
was Goofy, Barney, How I Met Your Mother, the
No.
whole time.
Legend.
I also
wait for
have-
it, Dairy.
sorry?
Oh, his quote from, isn't it like Legend, wait for it, Dairy?
Yes.
From
Yeah,
How I Met Your Mother.
Legend,
I could not get away from that. My other thing was casting Emily Ratajkowski.
Oh, I thought that fit.
Do you reckon?
Yeah,
I feel
'cause it's
like
she's like a young high schooler girl, really immature, and like kind of like the typical like, yes, you would cheat on your wife for this person. She's
You
young,
would.
she's bouncy.
I think
like
she
they say in
needed
the movie.
anonymity though. Like she just, when was that film made? 2014. She just
Yeah.
risen to fame in
Blurred
Blurred
Lines.
Lines. Robin Thicke's very controversial music video.
Yep.
I felt like she needed to be the anonymous doe-eyed schoolgirl.
Oh, okay.
I felt like putting her in there was almost like a bit of a product
distracting.
placement. There was
Oh,
a lot
okay.
of product placements in that film. They had Mountain Dew, they had Volvo, and they had Emily Ratajkowski. Just saying.
Oh, it's just kind
Product
of
placement
weird.
for what?
It's just kind of
Really?
weird. The whole product placement thing, considering it's in a Fincher movie. I think Fight Club.
Oh.
That's a movie which critiques the whole capitalism
Yeah.
and product whatever.
Because like product placement is like a part of that.
Yeah,
movie,
but at the
part of
same time,
critique.
I think I'm not sure how true this fact trivia is. There's a Starbucks
In every shot.
in every shot. Yeah.
I feel like actually, in contrast to what you were saying about Neil Patrick Harris's casting, I'd say that actually it was probably the best casting they could have gone for, especially considering how well I feel it contrasted what they made Neil Patrick Harris's character as in How I Met Your Mother, because when you think about it, in reality, you can kind of see his character if he's lost everything, or if he has become so popular, to go back to someone and also almost have this antagonizing role in the way that he kind of like almost manipulates people. And again, it comes back to that whole entire, I guess, Me Too movement, if I guess you could say, in the way that like Fincher almost recontextualizes his social character, and once you remove all of the humor and you remove the laughs and so forth, a lot of the stuff that Neil Patrick Harris's character does in How I Met Your Mother does kind of mimic.
It's really like, it's not in favor of women. Like he objectifies them and he uses them and stuff like that.
And that's almost like what his character does
Does
in
in
this.
Gone Girl,
He he objectifies
And he controls
Rosamund
her
Pike,
and
and
traps her.
and tries to push her to do what he wants, despite her not wanting to do that, which
Yeah.
in a way almost makes this casting choice great, because he's dissecting a character that so many people love and showing the dark side that can arise from certain things like that. Almost a critique of the How I Met Your Mother genre, not genre, like
Or like
TV
the
show.
sitcom-y sort of
Yeah.
thing.
That's a
fair
fair
enough.
call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
While
fair
I
comment.
agree with you, I still don't think his acting was that great compared to some of the other performances in the movie.
But I think that's the point that was put across in the script. He was meant to be dull. He's not meant to have almost a soul, I guess you could say. He's not meant to be a person that you actually would go back to. And that's why she went back to him, because
I don't
he
think
is...
anyone in the
desperate,
movie, anyone in the movie is worth going back to.
Oh, well, I mean...
Oh, Ben Affleck, come on.
No, but even then, like, he was a pretty bad
Oh,
person.
he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like talking of really good casting, though, I think Rosamund Pike and Ben Affleck were perfectly cast. Like
The
Ben
chemistry
Affleck
was
just
amazing.
chemistry, but also like the type of characters that Ben Affleck plays.
Mm.
Like he always plays kind of like the flawed hero, and
Yeah.
I thought that he was really good for this, especially that smile part at the
Yeah,
press
with the
conference,
chin.
and then the chin as well. I don't know. I feel like he played that really like in a way that was really believable. But also Rosamund Pike, wow, amazing acting chops. I don't know if she got recognized for this
No,
role,
I don't think so.
but
think she
I
did.
thought she was amazing.
And the
in
strange
this
thing
movie.
is, I don't see her acting in any other movie.
What?
Which is which.
No, she's played in quite a couple.
Yeah,
I
but
saw her
mean,
in Johnny
in the
English.
same way, as in.
In the
which,
same vein of that,
Yeah.
Oh, like
which-
dramatic
serious.
films
which
like
allows
this,
her
yeah.
to showcase her acting chops.
Because she's such a chameleon. Like, I read somewhere that Fincher cast her because she can look young but also old.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think that that's quite true.
It's true.
And also, to your point, to David's point before about her being like an alien, I think she's more like a chameleon. She fits in where she wants to fit in, and she's very highly adaptable. But I think that when she fitted into her marriage as this type of woman, she expected Nick to do the same. And when he started, stop doing that, she still had enough agency to actually take action and put him back in his place, pretty much, which is what happens at the end of the movie, which is impressive but absolutely terrifying. Like, that's just so scary how diabolical she is.
Even her voice, I found, like in that monologue where
The
she's
cool
not
girl
necessarily
one?
in the shot. Yeah, in Gone Girl.
Yeah. No, the
when
cool
she
girl
goes,
monologue.
the cool
Yeah.
girl
Yeah.
monologue. Her voice is just amazing when
It's,
she
like,
goes through the
smooth
whole
and calm,
process.
but also like you can feel the there's so much hate and vengeance in her voice. Like, she resents being thrust into that position of being the cool girl and whatever, because the cool girl is abused pretty much. Yeah, no, I thought it was really good.
I still feel like Fincher does have better thrillers. Seven, for example. Great thriller.
7.
Great performances, great ending. Don't want to spoil it, but if you haven't watched it, definitely do.
I
He's
haven't
also
watched
got
it.
The Game as well. Fight Club, which I wouldn't necessarily call a thriller.
I think Fight Club and Gone Girl goes well hand in hand. It both talks about the toxic masculinity
And femininity.
and how it affects relationships between people, and how it forces us to re-examine our own
Yeah,
relationships
yeah.
because people are too selfish.
Yes, that's very true. But yeah, no, Fight Club is quite interesting because it also, while in Gone Girl it's less duality and more just like general like chameleon-like stuff. But in Fight Club there's that duality of, Tyler Durden and the narrator, and also the effect that it has on like his other relationships like Marla, and also his relationship to society. And in Fight Club it's very much like toxic masculinity. They blame women for everything, and so yeah, they try and like resolve that by making this Fight Club, obviously, but obviously we see that it doesn't quite work.
And I think Fight Club, the strangest part about the movie is that it was meant to mock
Yeah, it was
this
meant to be
toxic
like
masculinity.
satire.
Yeah, it was
and
supposed to be a
then-
satire, and all these people come up, all these dude bros come
Yeah.
up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, have you seen Fight
yeah,
Club,
have you seen
bro?"
Fight Club? It's so cool. I
It's
want
so
to make
cool.
a Fight Club. They haven't got the message on that.
Yeah, and that's the worst part because he's critiquing it, and they are accepting the critique as some sort of a message, which is which again goes back to the Joker review, which you were talking about.
Mhm.
I think the same thing is probably going to happen with Joker. It kind of happened with Dark Knight because people started relating to the Joker
the
for no
Joker
reason.
being
Because
like,
Joker
yes.
is not a good person. He is a psychopath.
Mm.
He's not. He's a madman who's
He feels like he's entitled to something from the world.
Yeah, exactly, and it's not a good message, and people start following him, and people talk about him as if he's some kind of a hero, anti-hero. He's not.
Yeah,
He
no way.
doesn't want anything good for the society. He's just a psychopath who just wants to watch the world burn.
People just want
It's
to
not
be
good.
edgy on a very shallow level.
But I feel like that's the thing that like Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club, did so well, and I think that's what his plan was. It was to dissect what was occurring, and a lot of his books really do go into toxic masculinity and tear it apart. There's a lot of stuff, especially with the whole loss of testicles and so forth, and just there's so many references to where people are like, oh, I have cancer of the testicles, or if you do something wrong, we'll cut off your balls. His entire I guess not, I wouldn't necessarily say message, but like his modus operandi is almost to like destroy what he hated most. And it's ironic because then if you look at how the book did, the book is forbidden in prisons itself because it causes riots and so forth, and it actually does make the prisoners more violent. So I feel like that entire breaking down of the social stereotypes is rather prominent within not only Palahniuk's work but also in Finch's work. If you look at things such as the game, where he breaks down, literally breaks down
A game.
a game and breaks down the man who is Michael Douglas's character into someone who just really wants to escape and someone who isn't on top of the games. And we see how if you aren't on top, if you don't have the power to do so, some people who, despite being so powerful now, can just as easily become everyone else and maybe even something worse because they can't handle the loss of what they once had. I just find that so interesting, and it's just something that goes through like all of his movies. And again, Seven.
Seven is a brilliant movie. I think
it's great.
It came out right after Usual Suspects, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it
With
really
Kevin Spacey
redefined.
again.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey was on a.
Our favourite.
But yeah, Kevin Spacey had which one was it? Usual Suspects.
Usual
He had
Suspect.
American Beauty, and then he had Seven. American Beauty is the best of.
He
parts.
dissected
Yeah.
that part
So well.
so beautifully.
Yeah, American Beauty again, another movie about toxic masculinity
Yeah.
and about relationships,
Facades and-
the suburban, the happy suburban life.
Would you call it a thriller though?
Which American? No,
American Beauty.
No, I think it's more of a drama, a breakdown of character. I think. Yeah.
Apparently the ending was going to be so much different, but again, not going to spoil anything. So I guess with that being said, we'll move on to some of our favorite thrillers that aren't done by Alfred Hitchcock or David Fincher.
So, Jasmine, what's your favorite thriller movie?
I can't decide on a favorite, but one of the ones that is up there is Fargo. Not really, like, you don't really think of it as a thriller, and honestly, when I first saw it, I was like, this is very funny, but I think it's a great subversion of the genre, like the crime thriller sort of genre, because it's set in, like, it's not slick like a lot of Fincher films are, and it's got genuinely like funny comedic moments from like just the incompetence of William H. Macy's character and him just trying to get away with what he's done. I think it's hilarious, but it's also quite shady. Like when you look past the humor, you think about what he's done and you're like, damn, that's actually really like, effed up. But I think the whole setting in Fargo and the whole Minnesota nice accent, it's a quaintness that contrasts against the shady stuff that goes down, and also the cold, snowy setting. It's quite different from slick city thrillers. And also, of course, Frances McDormand's character as the pregnant cop. I think she's so cool. She's so amazing. And yeah, it just goes to show that, like, you know, you don't, like, they're not deadbeat cops all the time, but you don't need, like, world-class detectives to solve these sorts of crimes. I think it's quite a good subversion of the genre.
And I feel like that's what the Coen brothers really do with, like, all of their films, especially if you start off with Blood Simple. They always have that, I guess, very destructive mode of telling the story in what they show, with things like, again, Blood Simple, where there is a husband who's trying to get someone else killed and so forth, but they also unveil the humanity in people in how stupid some of their decisions are.
Yeah.
And talking about, I guess, stupid decisions and comedy with regards to death and so forth, I'd say that my favorite thriller would have to be In Bruges, and it's just such an amazing film. If you ever wanted to see, in my opinion, the apex of so many actors' careers, such as Colin Farrell, Gleason,
Yeah.
or Ralph Fiennes as well. It's just an amazing film, and it's so hard to describe because it's just such a gorgeous film set in a gorgeous town, but it really does wrap itself around some of the more interesting aspects of life in a way of a holiday that turns into something so destructive and so death reliant, in the way that they are two hitmen just trying to escape what they have done. But it just goes into that, and it goes into religion, and it just utilizes everything so well. And I think that's something that Martin McDonagh, the director and writer, does so well. He also did it in his film Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and it's just something that I feel like is so. I feel like comedy itself works so well in the thriller genre, because I feel like if you take it too seriously, then it can get far too dark, and I feel like that's something that a lot of thrillers go down, and it's a path that they go down that's far too
an example of that is kind of like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Like, that movie is really, it's not that, I feel like it's not that rewatchable because it's so serious, but if you use comedy to sort of balance that, it can be really effective.
Yeah, it kind of like just eases out everything and makes it a lot more easy to digest, especially when the contrast between, like, how I guess destructive their jobs are in the fact that they're hitmen, and then you see them making fun of a dwarf or like a little person. I don't know what the correct term is. I'm sorry if I insulted anyone. And how there's just that the dwarf, and he's just snorting ketamine and stuff like that, and it's just the way in which they mix everything to almost make a sort of Dante Inferno-esque, Dante's Inferno-esque kind of story, as it just goes further and further into purgatory, and he makes that reference at the end, and it just works so well, because then you reflect on the rest of the plot and the rest of the story, and you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it's just these comedic aspects that make you want to rewatch it, and makes it so rewatchable, as you mentioned before, Jasmine, with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Alright.
Yeah.
So both of you guys were talking about movies, thrillers which had a comedic element to it, and talking about Fargo, I think the TV show Fargo is amazing as well, and people should definitely give it a watch. It's not really one. I'm talking about entirely new thing, which is a Korean movie industry and how they make thrillers. I think there are a lot of gems which people haven't watched. One of them being Memories of Murder, directed by Bong Joon-ho. Is the same guy who directed The Parasite. Yes, another good movie. Memories of Murder, the best part about it is the way he incorporates almost genuine comedy into very serious situations. It's about two cops trying to solve a series of murders, and it's brilliantly made. And I think it's even better than Parasite. I think it's on different levels. Parasite, it dealt more on a metaphorical basis. It's all about metaphors.
But I feel like the ending really made Parasite. If they didn't have the ending, then I would honestly, and I hate to say it, but I got incredibly bored in the middle of Parasite.
Ouch!
If the
Ouch.
ending wouldn't have come, I wouldn't have enjoyed the film as much as I
Yeah,
did. It
fair
reminded
enough.
me of films such as Burnt by the Sun and those that, honestly, if you watch them and you remove the ending, then they would just be.
They're not that great. Yeah.
They delve on something, beautifully shot, beautifully edited, great dialogue. But if you don't have the ending, if you don't have that kicker, then it just
It falls
wouldn't
apart.
be the film that it is. Because I feel like that sudden ending, again, don't want to spoil it, but the ending just creates the film. And if it just dealt on the whole, we need money, our family is out of money, we need to go do something else.
I think
You're
it's
just
more of
speaking
a
from a
cultural
privileged
thing.
position.
Yeah, I think it's more of a cultural thing. I mean, probably some of the themes would escape people who are not used to the same kind of culture. Maybe the same.
Yeah, maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, it really depends because it's
it
from
probably
the Korean
relates
film
more to
industry.
people who are from the same place or
Yeah.
who are coming from the same kind of
Yeah.
I don't know, cultural background maybe.
Yeah.
Also, talking about films which end on a
Yeah.
kicker, I'd like to talk about Handmaiden and Old Boy as well, directed by Park Chan-wook, another Korean movie which is brilliantly made. Just go watch Handmaiden, Old Boy, the Korean version. Please do not watch the English version of Old Boy because it's horrible. It's one of the worst movies I ever watched.
Spike Lee just butchered that film.
I don't like Spike Lee, man.
I can't stand him.
I
He
can't
takes a
stand-
position of power that he does not have.
Yes. I mean, the interviews for Old Boy, when he directed it, he was like, he didn't care for the movie. He made
Yeah.
it just so he could make it. And it really hurt me because the original is such a masterpiece. It features some great acting, some of the greatest storytelling ever. One of the best endings. Like, oh,
For sure.
God, the ending.
Yeah. Oh, that ending just hits hard.
It hits really hard. And yeah, you should watch it. I think it just gets better and better, everything about the movie. So yeah, guys, check out Korean movies. Korea has got tons of great thrillers.
I think the one great thing about Korea is their food, and within their food, they do have quite a lot of seafood. Seafood reminds me of fishes. It reminds me of different things. It reminds me of sharks. And wouldn't you know?
What a
Lucy,
segue.
I was wondering where that was going to go.
What was that thriller you like?
Well, guys, we're going to need a bigger
Can
boat.
you guess?
Oh, we don't have enough time. Oh, we've got a few minutes.
Yeah, we got it, time.
So Jaws. I just wanted to briefly touch on Jaws. Not so much in the film, but just in terms of its strategy. Its marketing strategy was very, very, very interesting. It had a bit of a troubled production. It went over budget. It went past schedule. But it had a very exceptionally wide release on, I think it was 450 screens. It was probably the first real front-loaded film that we'd ever received. So a huge marketing campaign. I didn't actually see it until, I reckon I would have been about 16 years old. I was just too scared to watch it before then. And I feel like that's saying something about the film. I mean, you look at it now and you look at the shark and you're like, oh, wow.
It looks so fake.
It's the
So
other way around
fake.
for me.
Yeah,
Wasn't
it's-
it like Spielberg's first movie or something? Like first big movie?
I think it was his first big one. I don't think it was his first
No,
one.
first big movie.
It created the whole entire blockbuster.
So hype. The summer blockbuster hype.
Yeah.
The summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
The blockbuster itself was created by the James Bond franchise. I just like to put that out there. Everyone thinks it was Jaws. It wasn't. But it was the summer,
Summer
blockbuster.
blockbuster, yeah.
Yes. That's what did it. But yeah, it sort of reminds me of like an eco-trauma film. I mean, I know it's not the natural forces of nature. It's a massive shark.
Well, a shark is
but
a
it
natural
just,
force of
I guess,
nature.
but you know, it's not like something that we've created,
Something
like an
completely
environmental,
preventable.
like, you know, The Day
Yeah.
After Tomorrow, those sort
Yeah.
of films. But I guess like the threat just gets bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the film. And that end sequence with the, what does it in the end? They
The fishing reel.
no, the
Harpoon.
they set off
Did they
a-
go
they
through
set
the
off
shower?
that.
Oh, yeah.
They
The,
set off that.
fire extinguisher. Yeah, no.
No, it's not a fire
Doesn't he
extinguisher.
have it in
Oh, isn't it
between
like a
his
gas
jaws and
canister or
then he just
something?
like shoots it?
He
Okay,
has
guys,
something.
spoilers,
It's like
come
a,
on. No.
Oh,
Yeah.
shark dies.
Oh. Okay, the best shark dying sequence ever is Sharknado. if you haven't watched
Oh,
it.
jeez.
It's
no.
horrible.
Sharknado.
Oh, you're one of those.
Yeah, he goes through the entire shark with a chainsaw or something. He jumps in the air. He like goes through the shark using a chainsaw. He cuts
That's
through
some
it.
MacGyver shit.
No.
right
Yeah, it
there.
is garbage. I
Has
think
anyone-
the best part about Jaws probably it's pretty campy, but campy in a good way.
Mm.
And I think it really opened the way for a lot of
Definitely.
new directors who rely on such campiness to make good movies.
Especially one of my favorite shots that I just would be kicking myself if I didn't bring up is the shot where they're focusing on, I think his name's Hopper or Hooper's character, and you just see how the camera moves forward, but like it's so interestingly shot because it gets closer to his face, but as it gets closer to his face, somehow everything behind him, I'm not quite sure how they shot it, everything behind him kind of like just gets closer to him.
Isn't
It's-
that a Hitchcock?
Isn't it the
effect?
dolly?
Yeah,
It's
the
a dolly
dolly
thing.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dollies.
Yeah,
dollies.
yeah.
It's just
You know, it's
so
really good.
insanely well done, and I've seen
Yeah.
it done in so many other films, but I feel like he just pulled it off so well. Some other films that do it well are Lahain by Kasovitz, I can't remember his second name, and it's just an amazing effect. But the way that Spielberg used it was just so insanely beautiful. I just had to put it out there, not that it has anything to do with anything. but yeah.
No, I think it creates a good job at like creating the suspense. It's like the culmination of the suspense. It's like, yeah, it's like his world is crumbling apart around him as he realizes that he couldn't stop the shark from actually killing people. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing which I'd like to add before we go on to the next song, next bit is the movie which we decided on first.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
Is
Another great thriller. I guess if we were to put a quickie out there, it would probably... I don't know how to describe it really. Okay, so
Cannibalism.
Anthony Hopkins, great.
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster,
Yeah.
great. Everybody, great. However, does have its flaws in the way
Indeed,
that...
yeah, it does. It feels a bit old.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I definitely get behind that, and also the fact that for some reason they seem to put that Jodie Foster's character is far too smart. Like for some reason, I feel like there's no connection between how she gets to Buffalo Bill's place and where like that basically cuts off between like the FBI and so forth. And I'm pretty sure that's because they cut out a scene. But I felt like in terms of the flow of the movie, it kind of like shut itself down. Not sure about that, but like in terms of pacing and so forth, that's probably my only gripe with the film. But it's an amazing film, an amazing thriller, and if you ever want to see something that does really take the thriller genre in its own direction and create something amazing with it, definitely check it out. Especially because like Jonathan Demme, beautiful director, beautiful man.
Okay, so to wrap up, what are some movies that we're looking forward to?
Yeah. You go
After
first.
oh, well, recently I've watched Last Black Man of San Francisco, in San Francisco. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film. If I'd have to give a suggestion for a film coming out, I honestly, there's just so many, it's
Uncut
hard
Gems.
to choose.
Uncut
Gems for sure. Uncut Gems for sure, and yeah, how about you guys?
I really want to see The Farewell.
Oh.
It looks really interesting.
I still haven't
That
watched
looks interesting.
Midsommar.
It's been doing well.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. But yeah, apart from that, not much else.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you next week with more
Same
movies.
time, same place.
Yeah, same time. All right. Bye bye. See ya.
Thanks, guys.